Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Coronavirus Chat. I'm your host, BJ Murphy, publisher of Neuse and NeuseNews.com. Coming to you this Friday afternoon, immediately following the Governor Cooper's his press conference this afternoon regarding the opening of Phase 1, effective at 5 p.m. today of his three-phase plan to reopen. So first thing I want to do is jump into an update. As of this morning, there were just under 14,000 cases of COVID-19 across our state, or at least from the beginning. That is not, I want to make sure that I'm clear, that is not the number of active cases. That's just the number of total cases that the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services has been following since the beginning. There have been 527 deaths across our state. Greene County, 35 cases. They announced their first death this morning, unfortunately. Jones County has 18 cases with 2 deaths, and Lenoir has 105 cases with 4 deaths. If you're watching, please make sure you share this broadcast. We have Senator Jim Perry today. There's been a lot of questions about unemployment and the state's role in this crisis, the General Assembly's role, along with the governor's role. And so a lot of questions around that. And we're going to have Senator Jim Perry, who sits on the Health and Human Services Appropriations Committee, the Commerce and Insurance Committee, and Healthcare Committee. So he's got an interesting perspective on how the politics and the policies play into the real economic calamity we're facing, as well as the health care industry as well. So we'll have him on in just a second. Governor Roy Cooper announced that Phase 1 begins today at 5 p.m. Basically, he says that gatherings of 10 remains in effect, that state parks will open, and retail can now have 50% capacity of the stores that are allowed to open up. If you have not already, please make sure you send a text, keyword NN, to 484848 to get all the breaking news text alerts for Neuse News. Just text the keyword NN to 484848. And also be sure to share this broadcast and comment. And if you got a question related to unemployment or the state of North Carolina, please go ahead and drop it in the comments below. Letha Thrower is monitoring the social media chatter, so we can kind of make sure we get as many questions as we possibly can. And I just noticed that Jennifer King from Jones County sent us 1,200 stars. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. It's a really new tool that Facebook uses to allow people to say thank you to us. And so we say thank you, Jennifer King, for those stars. Really appreciate that very much. All you got to do is go in the comments, you purchase a pack of stars, and for every star we get, we receive, Neuse News receives a penny for our broadcast. So thank you so much, Jennifer King, for that. Now, we want, before we get to Senator Perry, just want to say a big thank you to Lenoir Community College, and they have a special message for all their students, faculty, and our community.
Good chances are most of us are waiting for life to begin again, waiting for the green light, the play button, the next chapter. But what if we didn't need to wait? The time we have right now is used for something life-changing. After all, time may have slowed down, but it hasn't stopped, and neither have your goals. Keep moving toward your goals and your degree with online classes through Lenoir Community College. Just visit lenoircc.edu today to get started. That's lenoircc.edu.
That's a great message from Lenoir Community College. Keep moving, keep pursuing that degree. Certainly applaud them. They've got a lot of great continuing ed classes and other classes that are available online, as well as their summer and fall registration coming soon. So make sure you just go check out any questions you have. Please go check out lenoircc.edu for all the information pertaining to Lenoir Community College. Now, I'd like to welcome our guest here today, Senator Jim Perry, who represents Lenoir and Wayne counties. Thank you so much, Senator, for jumping on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, BJ.
Well, let's talk about one of the questions that was proposed that you answered the other day on your Facebook channel. You've got a very active feed, and as a constituent, as also somebody who's loves social media, I really appreciate the effort there to continue communicating with the citizens. But one of the questions that you posed that I assume was posed to you at some point was, can the North Carolina General Assembly, the senators and representatives that make up our state, the representation of our state, can they end executive orders by resolution? Is that possible?
Yeah, so it's a pretty normal question because as people sit home and they become more frustrated, they're reading and they're hoping to find something. Everyone is looking for some relief, or some people are, and they see parts of the law that seem to jump out. And I know that's what's going on because I've done the same thing over the years. I'm not an attorney. I just enjoy learning and reading. So what they have found is a section in the Constitution. I think it was Section 3 or Article 3, Section 5, and it was a reference to a constitutional amendment that was proposed at the end of the 60s, and it passed in the early 70s, and it was dealing with the restructuring of government, I think, just when Governor Holshouser came in. But it was very specific to be about restructuring government. So, no, it cannot be used to end executive orders.
All right. Well, and I know you noticed this week, and I was actually, I'll be honest, I was a little taken back by how strongly worded the Lenoir County Commissioner's letter was to the governor this week. But apparently they weren't the only ones that had some of these feelings. 7 other communities or counties in our area signed on to it. But here's one quote from it. It said, and it was a letter from Lenoir County Commissioners to Governor Cooper, and they said, quote, "These orders," talking about the executive orders, "these orders have placed an extreme economic hardship on our local county economies," end quote. And so they signed off on this letter basically asking the governor to allow counties and possibly even regional partnerships of counties to help with the reopening phases of the government. What say you?
Well, I think that part of that frustration comes in is that, when you start talking about state law or doing anything on a statewide basis, you're really painting with a very broad brush, and the conditions are not the same. Although you've got, one color of paint, one big brush, the conditions are different from regions of the state to different regions of the state. So, I get the frustrations. I understand, we don't have the population density that they would have in Mecklenburg or Wake County. We don't have the public transportation. We have a lot more single family housing. It just leads to different variables. We also don't have the ability to recover financially as quickly as someone with a lot of, money supply in their local economy, and the amount of disposable income that other communities have. So, the impacts are all over the map. I think it's fair to say that not only are the impacts variable, but so is risk. Everyone acknowledges that risk varies from situation to situation. So, I can understand and appreciate the frustrations that they have. When I think about this thing, I really value reasonable behavior and people who work to control their emotions. And if someone differs with your opinion, I'm really getting sick of seeing opinion shaming. I've got friends who are legitimately afraid. They have legitimate health concerns. I've got friends who are healthcare professionals, and they're certainly on one end of the spectrum. I've also got friends who are small business owners. I've got constituents who are small business owners, and they are facing financial ruin. And, that's a very real thing too. And they're being painted in the corner of this false dilemma, this logical fallacy of, if you disagree with me, you're a bad person. And the only way you could possibly disagree with me is if you're bad. And that's overly simplistic. I think me personally, I think it's ridiculous. People feel the way they feel for a reason. And I think that's what you see the county commissioners expressing are the various frustrations. And they'd rather have the local control that's designed to be used in these circumstances.
And one thing I'll point out there is that the counties and cities are creatures of the state. So the North Carolina General Assembly controls those boundaries, which means, really in North Carolina, the Governor, General Assembly, and in fact, the judicial branch, all three make up the supreme power of what happens in North Carolina. We certainly rely on the federal government, but the counties and cities are actual creatures of the state, which allows you to shift borders or a number of things. But that would be the reason why the counties would send a letter asking for this clarification or this request. Speaking of shaming, one topic that's been really hot lately has been this conversation. I actually had this conversation with Dr. Pradeep yesterday. Is this conversation about mask or no mask? And in fact, Governor Cooper, Dr. Mandy Cohen, the HHS secretary, as well as Mike Sprayberry, the emergency management director for our state, today in the press conference, they all encouraged everyone to wear masks, especially as we go through phase one. I was intrigued by how much they were talking about it. Even the governor showed a mask. But honestly, I have, as many of those press conferences I've watched, I've never seen them wear a mask. In fact, recently there was a picture of the General Assembly, the senators' chambers. Half of them wear a mask, half were not. What are your thoughts on this conversation about to wear or not to wear a mask?
Well, I think that there's people who are very confused. In the beginning, there was a lot of conversation about masks, but it was regarding personal protection and whether or not you let moisture droplets get through that may carry infection. And the ruling was, and it was accurate, that no, a cloth mask does not protect you. And since that time, the CDC came out and made the suggestion that, wearing a cloth mask will keep some of your personal moisture droplets in. So maybe it is a good thing and helps protect others. And I'm conservative by nature, so I will say that I think that the science behind it is that it does catch some moisture. So I'm sure it can help. Does it stop everything? No. You've seen the examples of the size of the virus and then the size of a hair molecule. So I think that you see people having mixed feelings about it. I'll tell you that in that chamber, it wasn't based upon party as to who did not have a mask on or off when the camera was not on. So it's a little frustrating.
And I'm just curious, do you know if the governor and some of his top administrators have actually been tested for COVID-19 or are tested on a regular basis by chance?
I do not know. I would be a little surprised if folks had been tested because, early on the guidance was that they were saving the test for those who were symptomatic. So I don't know, but I would speculate not.
All right. Well, let's talk about unemployment. This has been a big topic of debate over the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially as the stimulus checks and the tax code has been altered a little bit over the last few weeks to help communities and help people. In fact, I was actually speaking with someone today who said he applied for unemployment 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he hasn't heard anything on it. And I know that's been a hot topic for you. In fact, just the other day on Facebook, you said it just doesn't feel right to watch government cut people, then punish them for trying to stop the bleeding. In fact, even by your own math, you said that it takes one employment security representative about 14 hours to process a claim. I mean, does that really seem fair to you?
So when I did the math on that, at the time we were told there were 600 people in the call center. And when I broke down, I think there was about 14,114 calls or something. Anyway, the math worked out that if they all spent about 30 minutes processing a claim, they had only done about 28 claims each at that time. So I heard today on the press conference, there's 1,000 people taking calls. I don't know how many people are taking calls, but I'll tell you, it's not enough. I will tell you that there are people who are not only running out of money, but some who have already run out of money. And I don't care what your political party is. I don't care where you're from or what you believe. That is wrong. And we need to, whatever we're doing. And in situations like this, I think it's very common. You see it in corporate America. You certainly see it in government. People like to talk about what they have done. And I'll say that what we have done doesn't matter because it's not enough. we have people who can't get through. They've got families to feed. They've got responsibilities. We've got people who are scared. And honestly, it's wearing on me taking the phone calls from people and feeling so helpless to be able to do anything for them. I don't care how many people are taking calls. It's not enough, and we need more.
And you actually suggested, I think you have either already filed or drafted legislation regarding this issue. What steps are you as a North Carolina State Senator taking to address it?
So, it's a tough thing because most people are aware now, if they were not before, that we can't just file legislation and guarantee that it be passed, because if it changes any portion of the order, and I'm not saying I think everything should be done away with, but if it alters anything and it's a statewide order, it must go before the governor, and he's got to sign it or veto it, and then we have to be able to override it if we want to change something. I don't believe those override votes exist. You look at the last 14 bills during 2019, we were not able to override a single veto that he had. So there are different avenues that we're exploring. You've seen some legislation filed that we hope, would at some point be a common sense thing that, hey, if we're the ones that hurt these people, we can't punish them. We took their livelihood. Or the government did. Government took their income, and you didn't replace it, and you're supposed to. So they go out and try to survive, and you're really going to fine them or take their license. That just doesn't feel right. So we've got some legislation that eliminated, greatly reduced the fines and eliminated the ability for a licensing board, an occupational licensing board, to take someone's license. We're considering some other legislation. There's some other possible routes to go. There are some challenges, to going a different route. But we're trying to figure it out the best we can. I don't think people understand. We're just as frustrated as you are about some of the provisions and some of the difficulties. If you take my ability to earn a living for my family, and then you're responsible for replacing it, and you don't, I think I have to react the way some of these people are acting. I think we've got to be very real about this. We have to balance this equation. Right now, we've been focusing very hard on one side of it, and there is another to consider, and it's not all or nothing. There are various steps in between that could provide relief, and I think we've got to remember not just those at risk for health, but those at risk for mental health issues, the stress and burden that economic stress puts on families and what that leads to. This isn't simple, and we shouldn't be oversimplifying it and vilifying somebody or demonizing them because they are feeling, genuine stress over something.
And thank you for that. And for everybody that's watching, we're joined by Senator Jim Perry, who represents Wayne and Lenoir County today. And he is a member of the Health and Human Services Appropriations, the Commerce and Insurance Committees, as well as the Healthcare Committee. And so we're seeing some of that insight on what he's getting from communications with the administration, his colleagues in the North Carolina Senate and General Assembly. And I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's watching. If you don't mind, please share this broadcast. I mean, what you heard Senator Perry say just a while ago is that, no matter how many people are taking calls in Employment Security Office, right now it's not enough. And I think that's a pretty strong statement. And I want to say a big thank you to Casey Whaley earlier for donating some stars to us in the comments. If that's something you want to do, just go in to make a comment, click on stars, and get to that. I think there was a question also from the audience, and I'll go back to you, Senator Perry, on this, because I want to get to one more. I've got another question for myself, but there was a question, almost kind of a statement that said, if masks work, why do businesses need to be closed? And if they don't work, why are we forced to wear them? And I think that is a sense of some of the frustration that is happening with our society today.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that the way to probably think about masks, and I realize everyone's tired, right? Been going through this, and we're all very frustrated. but I think they're thought of as more like a seatbelt. It doesn't prevent everything, but it does, help in some ways. But no, it doesn't prevent spread. It helps prevent spread.
Well, and a question I had is that there was a report released just this week, and it said that North Carolina ranked 45th out of 50 states when it comes to testing. In fact, even some of your colleagues wrote a letter concerning that matter. 45th out of 50 states, yet Dr. Mandy Cohen today stated that we were in the top 20 states in testing. Where are we really? I mean, where are we with testing, and is it enough?
Yeah, so my assumption on that is that there's variability from day to day. We have some very big testing days, and then we go pretty far down. I assume that's typically on the weekend. So I think that's just variability from when that information was released, and then as testing has increased, we probably shuffle positions back and forth during the week and during the month with other states. So I get the frustration on that too. Timely sharing of data, of the data, is something that frustrates a lot of members of the media, the public. I'm sure it frustrates some members of HHS as well, because it does create problems. It also creates distrust when sometimes maybe it's not earned, and then sometimes you do earn it. That's the nature of dealing with a lot of people. But I think being timely with that data could help those things. If I could, I just want to circle back on something when you asked me about DES and unemployment. We do plan to have a Commerce and Insurance committee meeting on, I think it's Monday the 18th at 2 p.m. And I'm going to be putting a link out on Facebook. I've got so many people who have reached out to me because of my efforts to communicate. Maybe they're in my district, maybe they're not, but I've been contacted by a lot. I'm going to put a link out there, and if you want to sign up to come speak to that committee, we're going to request members of DES to be on site to give us an update. And we think it's important for members of our state government and members of those departments to hear these voices. So we're going to be inviting some individuals to come up and speak. If you'd like to sign up and talk with me about that, I'd love to have a wide variety of business owners, employees, I mean, all backgrounds in the world, because that's what we have here in North Carolina. And I want you to be heard. I don't want someone to just stand up and talk about what we have done. I want people to really understand how what we haven't done is impacting you and your families, because that's real world stuff. So if you're willing to come do that, please just fill out the information on the link and we'll be in touch.
And I appreciate that. And make sure you send that to us, and we'll be glad to put that out on our We Report Neuse News. In fact, if you're not a member of our We Report Neuse News Facebook group, I would encourage you, those who are watching, to join that. Last question I want to get in is related to the phase 1 reopening, and I'll let you do a closing. I've seen a lot of chatter on social media about hair salons and their ability not to open, yet some dental offices are being allowed to open. And the governor even today was talking about, one of the health experts are saying that people who sit or stand still for more than 10 minutes, especially indoors, greatly increases their risk of spreading this virus. And I'm going, well, you're not sitting still in a gym, you're sitting still in a dentist chair or a salon chair. So why are salons not allowed to open when dental practices are? And I'm just really confused at the picking and choosing here. What are some of your thoughts on how this is playing out?
So I will, definitely say that this has been very unfair economically for many people. It's heartbreaking to see people going through this. If I'm going to be fair, I also have to say that, it's an imperfect situation, and I don't think the governor had the ability to make perfect decisions in this. But as we move down this road, I think it's easier to see them now. And I would I would hope there would be some consideration for that and efforts to be creative to find a way for these people to earn a living. This is very, very difficult, and I think that there can be some balance on that. But if I was in that business, I try to think about it through their lens, and I know how I would feel. I mean, I receive messages all day from friends who, that's how they feed their family, and it's very easy.
Right.
I did hear an interesting quote. Someone told me that your view of this is largely shaped by money in the bank. So if you're still receiving an income, or if you have, plenty of extra cash in the bank, you tend to be a little more patient. And if you're more desperate, you want to find creative solutions, or if you're feeling more pressure. And those are real world things, right? That we need to understand and acknowledge that someone's not bad for the pressures they feel.
And I'll give you a chance. One last thought was the governor's, or is his team, the administration, are they still communicating regularly with the General Assembly, with legislators like yourself? I want to leave that last question to you, and then give you any final comments you'd like to give to people before we close out today's show.
Okay, so just being very honest about it, the governor has liaisons that work for him that are, in my opinion, just fantastic people, and they work hard to get back in touch with us and to communicate. Do I talk to the governor? Do I interact with him? No. We have a couple of calls, that we'll have with Secretary Cohen on some issues, and we get to ask some general questions. But we're not involved in these decisions on what the phasing should be or what the shutdown should be. We don't get any input on that. I know some people think that we do, but we don't. In fact, I find out many things at the same time you do in a press conference. And, that's a little frustrating. Again, acknowledging that it's an imperfect situation, but you wonder why we end up feeling like we all pull back into teams. And personally, I think that contributes to it, and some free flow of information and dialogue on the front end probably would help situations of that nature, but it's not what we have.
And any final thoughts you have to leave the people, how they can get in touch with you, or anything you'd like for them to know?
Sure. So I try to be responsive. I know several of our colleagues in the General Assembly do also, and try to be proactive in sharing information. And if I start getting a lot of the same questions, I try to proactively put information out, sort of a frequently asked questions type of thing individually. But you can reach all of us by going to the General Assembly's website. All of our email addresses are there. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter. I try to, share as much information as I can. I don't have all the answers. I can tell you that I'm just as frustrated as everyone else with where we are today. I try to take time to measure things and understand them. So I typically don't, swing too far either way in terms of being on an emotional scale. But don't take that to mean that I don't share your frustration and wouldn't like to find a way to ease, some of the pain that people are feeling. It's very real, and believe me, there's a ton of people just like me who want to be able to do something to help.
All right. Well, look, thank you, Senator Perry, for joining us here today. I wish you the best as well.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
And I just want to say a big thank you to Dr. Travis Town, who's behind the scenes, our chief technical engineer, who's helping to make sure and mastermind the graphics and the transitions of all this. Everything's happening. Really appreciate him. Also to Aletha Thrower, who's helping to monitor the social media chat. I want to say a big thank you to the folks who submitted stars as well. Appreciate that. And for everybody who commented, hopefully we got to the questions. If we didn't, I apologize for that too. And I just want to say a big thank you to Senator Jim Perry for taking his time out. If you have not done so already, please make sure you subscribe to our free daily email newsletter. It's in your inbox every day at 7 o'clock. It's all the day's top headlines. It's free. Everything we do here at Neuse News is free, and that is on purpose. No pop-up ads, no subscription fees. We are always free, and we do that through the generous support of our advertisers. And folks who donate things like stars. So if you don't mind, go check out our newsletter, click on our advertisers, support them, go to our website, neusenews.com, and on our homepage and on the news articles and on the footer, there are people and businesses who still are supporting us even in this time. And we just cannot say thank you enough from our end, but you could say thank you on our behalf by supporting them, calling them if you need something, and letting them know, hey, Neuse News is the reason why I'm here. And that would make us feel really good. So thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate all you watching today. Remember, 5 o'clock today is when phase 1 effectively begins. And keep a check out on some breaking stories over the weekend with Neuse. And as always, please make sure you wash your hands.